Stewart Stevenson.
Presiding Officer, let me start by congratulating John Finney in bringing this subject to the Chamber tonight. In my constituency, we have a wetland that's part of the Ramsar Convention on wetlands of international importance. So I'm proud to represent the Loch of Strathbeg. That's a shallow, nutrient-rich loch and the largest dune slack pool in Britain. It's a rich habitat for flora and fauna with reed beds, freshwater marshes and much more beside. But most importantly, it's a wintering habitat for many wetland bird species, geese, whooper swan and many other varieties of waterfowl. Wetlands are, of course, some of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet and our most productive ecosystems. 3% of our land cover, 10% of our total biodiversity, and they create resilience in a changing environment, and that's why they're critical. But the benefits are also that they act as nature's shock absorbers in the face of extreme weather. They store rain during storms, reduce flooding, and delay the onset of droughts. Now, it may be obvious, but I'll talk about that a little bit further. We've already heard a little bit about Australia. We should think about California, both of whom have faced years of droughts over the last decade, punctuated, particularly at the moment, by tragic wildfires, even as we speak. What is telling is that California is estimated to have lost 90% of its wetlands over the last century, and in Australia, it's a figure that's very similar. It raises the question, what role would the presence of these lost wetlands play in the tragic situation we're seeing playing out? Better storage of rain during storms, rather than losing water to evaporation, perhaps, and perhaps delay the onset of drought. Now, except the destruction of wetlands is far from being the sole contributor to these tragedies, but it is one of a range of factors. Destroying wetlands has consequences. We must accept that these consequences are not yet fully realised. And critically, we must ensure that we reverse what destruction we can. I certainly have visited peatland that has been re-wetted and been astonished to see how quickly some parts of its diversity come back. Not necessarily all, but certainly a great deal of it. So on the global issue of destruction of wetlands, we've got to think big. We think that as much as 64% of the world's wetlands have been degraded since 1900. And significantly, as John Finney referred to, these are immense carbon sinks. So it's an issue that's highly relevant to the climate emergency. And of course, creating the circumstances where dry land promotes and allows fires to continue. We cannot continue with that approach. So therefore, tonight's debate makes its small contribution to our all recognising the importance of restoring wetlands, and I hope leads the way for others to challenge themselves with wetlands in other countries. Crucially, humanity's collective ignorance of wetlands is the greater challenge. I think we're engaged in the subject, but most of our population are not. We must therefore overcome that ignorance, persuade our friends, our colleagues, and people across Scotland and across the world that it is now time to act on the subject of wetlands.